Before we begin, I'd like to pay my respects to my teacher, the Most Venerable John May Park, and to Yuhei Kwang Sunim, and to your Sangha. I hope you're all doing well. Good to see you. Today's Dhamma talk is on this and that conditionality. I would like to begin with an example of what we call conditionals in everyday language. Then, by using an illustration, I will show you how things can move quickly from the simple to the very complex using just 6 variables. Consider the following sentence, which is called a conditional statement. If my brother arrives, then we will go to the temple. Notice here, this is a conditional in that we will not go to the temple if the condition of my brother being here is not met. Now let's move on to a statement using 2 conditions. If my brother arrives and the car is running, then we will go to the temple. This does not mean that the conditions caused us to go to the temple. There can be multiple causes for temple going, but the conditions set the occasion where temple going is possible. We can render the above conditional relationship in the following diagram. In logic, this is called an AND gate. Notice we can now insert any condition represented by A and B. In our previous example, A can represent if my brother is here, and B can represent if the car is running, and C can represent going to the temple if both conditions A and B are met. The important thing to remember is that C cannot occur, or let's say be on, unless both A and B are on. Let's move on to an example using the on-off functions of the Eightfold Path. In this diagram, if right view and right intention are on, this sets the occasion for right effort to be on. Let's consider diagram 3. We now have 3 conditions, but with an interesting twist. Right effort in this diagram is the right effort we noted in diagram 2. In other words, conditions A, right view, and B, right intention from diagram 2 gave rise to C, right effort, which has now become one of the 3 conditions in diagram 3, along with right mindfulness and right concentration, to set the occasion for right meditation. To complicate things further, right meditation can create feedback loops, which then affect any number, none, or all of the conditions preceding it, by increasing or decreasing the intensity of their conditions. For example, as one goes deeper into meditation, right effort decreases in intensity as we move more into an observer role, while simultaneously right mindfulness and right concentration increase in intensity, which then affects the whole matrix in another fashion. Note that effects become causes, causes become conditions, and then double back on each other and cause more effects, causes, and conditions. Now, this is just a hypothetical example using 6 variables from the Eightfold Path. Take a moment to consider the unfathomable set of causes and conditions at play at any given moment of our existence. The question then becomes how to possibly explain this causal conditional matrix. The Buddha provided the answer in the following formula. When this is, that is. With the arising of this comes the arising of that. When this isn't, that isn't. With the cessation of this comes the cessation of that. Tanisato Bhikkhu, or Ajahn Jeff, in his book called Wings of Awakening, provides the following analysis. View this formula as an interplay of two causal principles, one linear and the other synchronic, that combine to form a non-linear pattern. The linear principle, taking 2 and 4 as a pair, with the arising of this comes the arising of that, with the cessation of this comes the cessation of that, connects events rather than objects over time. The synchronic principle, 1 and 3, when this is, that is, when this isn't, that isn't, connects objects and events in the present moment. These two principles intersect so that any given event is influenced by two sets of conditions, input acting from the past and input acting from the present. Okay, suppose you see and recognize a baseball. There are factors such as size, color, where the ball is placed, which is an example of the synchronic principle, 1 and 3, outlined previously. This represents input we receive in the present moment. Now, as you remember, the linear principle, 2 and 4, connects events over time. Manufacturing the baseball, shipping the baseball, placing the baseball in front of you, just to name a very, very few. Now, thus far, these events have been external in nature. However, events are also connected in the mind. Let's consider the influence of conditioned mind. Suppose conditioned mind presents, I hate baseball, and exercise too. Thus, our intention, leading to action in relation to this ball, is determined from input acting in the present moment and input acting from the past. In this example, our negative experiences with baseball and exercise in general. Now, this is the key because this is our entry point into the causal conditional process. That is, radical attention to the present moment. Here, we have a choice, or free will if you prefer. We can let conditioned mind, assumptions, feelings, habitual patterns, etc., dictate our response in a knee-jerk fashion, or we can be mindful of these intervening elements and adjust our intention, action in a more skillful manner. Such adjustments then develop and refine our skill of mindfulness, which produces positive results. These results in turn provide feedback that further enhances and develops our mindfulness skills. Now, as non-participation in the karmic process is not an option, one will have to deal with karma that ripens at any particular moment. This is unavoidable. However, skillful intentions leading to skillful actions to those karmic events is possible utilizing mindfulness and concentration, or experiential Zen if you prefer. The important thing here is attention to three things in terms of the physical world and our mental reality. First, pre-existing conditions. Second, what one is doing in relation to those conditions. And third, results coming from one's actions. Therefore, one can monitor one's actions and adjust them accordingly, refining one's skill, as presented in our example. As one can see, this and that conditionality may seem alien and abstract, but actually it's a very familiar process that underlines all purposeful action. We also need to consider that old karma does not override other causal factors in the universe, but rather finds expression in them. Now we must keep in mind that there is no definitive time frame in which this and that conditionality can produce suffering and stress. A single sequence can last a moment, many years, or a lifetime. However, to continue functioning, these long sequences require repeated loops of momentary sequences. That's the reason this was stressed in our last Dhamma talk. These mind loops keep the identity process going, and therefore perpetuates our suffering. In conclusion, this and that conditionality is not an on-off function as we noted in the Eightfold Path. Rather, it is a permeator like karma. This interplay between karma and this and that conditionality makes up our total experience of reality. The key is to understand this relationship and entering the karmic matrix at its only vulnerable point, the present moment. It is there we can begin to unravel the system from within and reach a point where no new karma is generated. And that, my friends, is called enlightenment. Be well, my friends.